This podcast is proudly sponsored by Joro Protein, a Rhode Island plant-based protein supplement company designed for athletes and adventurers. They deliver 25 grams of protein, 5 grams of BCAAs, and 18 essential vitamins and minerals. It's non-GMO, it's gluten-free, it's allergen-free, no artificial flavors, no added sugar or stevia, and it has no additional gums, thickeners, or fillers. Right now, you can get 30% off on this podcast with the code JORORODIESTRENGTH 2022. You can find them at joroprotein.com. Hey, Andres.
What's up? Thank you for having me, Matt.
Of course. Welcome. I'm getting some weird glare. Let me change the angle right here. Awesome. Yeah, dude. Good to meet you. I'm glad you reached out, because I did a bunch of background and research before the podcast, and you got a lot of really cool stuff going on. So I'm super excited to have you on.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of my story on your platform.
Totally. So basically I have us slotted out for a full hour.
Okay.
If that works with you. I won't keep you any longer than that. Try to be respectful of your time. But I have that outline all written out there. And sometimes I use it, but sometimes, like, if we start getting into other topics, like, that's totally fine. We can kind of just go wherever the conversation leads us.
That's perfect.
But and then with all these podcasts too, like, they're pretty easy to edit. So if there is something you say and you're like, can you take that out or remove it, I can go back in and take something out. Yeah. So
thank you, man.
You got it. All right. How are you? Do I sound okay?
Yeah. Am I good?
Yeah. You look good. Yeah. Perfect. All right. So we'll get started. What's going on, guys? Dr. Matt here, host of the Roadie Strength podcast. We got a special guest on today, Andreas Aleman. Is it Aleman? Is it the correct pronunciation? Last name?
Yeah. It's Aleman.
Aleman. Gotcha. Okay. Perfect. Andreas Aleman. So really excited to have him on. He's a USAW national level coach. Just moved from Miami to New Hampshire, and is really big with Olympic lifting, especially with youth athletes and jiu-jitsu. So usually I like to start these off with rapid fire questions, just to kind of get the conversation going, and they're really interesting for me. So hopefully my listeners get something out of them too. But
for sure, let's do it.
So first question I got for you is favorite coffee shop. So this could be Miami, this could be New Hampshire, or really anywhere that you like.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of love for a coffee shop in Miami. It's called White Rose. White Rose is owned by one of my best friends, Javi. And the cool thing about this coffee shop, what makes it different, is that it's a coffee shop and a tattoo shop in the same spot.
No way.
Yeah. So it's a nice little setup, and it's different than other spots.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Have you gotten coffee and tattoos from that same spot?
Yeah, for sure. He's also done majority of my work. He's like the main tattoo artist there.
That's really cool. I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, if you're ever down there, you should definitely check that out.
That's really special. That's unique.
For sure.
How do you take your coffee?
I like iced coffee. I usually get like a latte with a hint of jasmine or a hint of rose.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. A little different.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, that'll lead us right into our next rapid fire question. We got favorite go-to breakfast, and if you're not you don't do breakfast, that's fine. We can skip. We go to the next one. But
I'm a classic scrambled eggs at home with some orange juice and coffee.
Nice. Okay. Solid. That's a staple right there. Yeah. Next question, we got favorite recent book. And I also kind of link this into the next question, which is favorite recent podcast. Because if you're more a podcast guy, what's maybe a recent podcast? I like Audible, so I listen to a lot of books on tape. But maybe a favorite recent book you like, or Audible, or podcast?
Yeah. So as far as the book goes, the last book that I'm been working on is a book to help create habits for my newborn baby so that it has proper sleep, and the parents, myself and my wife, get the
Yeah,
best sleep possible. So it's a book called the Secrets to Making Bedtime a Dream.
cool.
Small book, and I think it's got some good stuff. I could see some mistakes my parents made as a kid, and
Yeah.
those are the things I want to work on.
Anything big or exciting that you learned from it so far?
Yeah, the aspect of keeping a routine, and even if you go somewhere else and you're not at home, having some things like maybe like you stick certain things on the wall before the kid goes to sleep, and that's something that they could see before they go to sleep instead of you standing next to the kid or always being there. And that's something that creates a habit and a routine of not having you there before sleeping, and they could start sleeping by themselves.
That makes sense. Kind of get that like familiarity with a certain thing that
With an object that will stay there instead of you having to stay there the entire time.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, for sure.
I like that.
And then as far as the podcast, I'm really big right now into a Miami podcast called Sports with Soso.
Okay.
It's a friend of mine who does that podcast, and all he really does, he follows Florida sports, and he'll talk about what's going on. So as you know, right now Florida is doing pretty good with with their sports, and it's something good for me to follow.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been a big fan of basketball this year, and I have a soft spot for the Miami Heat. I know we in New England, obviously we're all Celtics fans up here, but I don't know, the Miami Heat have been a really cool team to watch with pro basketball.
Yeah, I think they do a good job. You know, not being the eighth seed and being where they're at now, and everyone overlooking them. And I think getting past the Celtics, especially me moving here
Yeah.
from Miami, has been a great experience. I actually got to go with my father-in-law to one of the games, and that was epic, epic. He got to go. We went to I think it was game 2 in Miami.
Do they win? Did the
Yeah,
Heat?
and the Heat won.
Cool. That's
So it was
awesome.
nice, and he was rooting for the Celtics, so it
Oh
was a
man,
nice it was a nice experience.
that's really cool. Yeah, I really nerded out about this team this year. The whole like I think with the sports betting odds, they were only given like a 3% chance or something like that.
3%. Yep.
Yeah, of even like advancing to was it the Eastern Conference Finals or the
Yeah,
finals, something like that. Yeah, so it's really cool. It's a team that like they don't have a lot of like quote unquote stars, but they were able to kind of like everybody kind of chips in and piece together. But
yep.
unfortunately, it didn't turn out for them last night. But that's all right.
It's all right. I'm happy where they got so far. I'm still proud of them, and I think the coach more than anything has been able to like show
Yeah.
him how valuable a good coach can be for a team.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, in New England, we kind of look at like the Bill Belichick's and like a coach like that who's been able to like run a dynasty of like many teams and do really well. And Coach Spo at Miami Heat is essentially doing the same thing. He's been there forever, which is unheard of in the NBA, having a coach there that long, and is seeming to take relatively low talent and just make a really good cohesive, like good chemistry. And like you said, that really comes down to showing like how much of a coach can be an impact, which I think
Yeah,
that'll like segue us to later in the podcast. But
for
yeah, it's a
sure, for
good
sure.
point. So, but best of luck to the Miami Heat for their next game. I think it's tomorrow or something like that.
Yeah, I think it is tomorrow.
So next question we got for you is favorite Instagram accounts. And the way I describe this is it could be something that you just and if you don't do Instagram, that's or no, I saw your Instagram, but
Yeah, I do for sure.
yeah,
I have a few. Obviously, one of my favorites. It's ran by my friends down in Miami. Is the Team Soul, which is the team I come from.
cool.
They always have great content, whether it be some educational stuff or some funny stuff. It's a good follow. Knees over toes. He's a classic follow for me. I feel like I've gotten a lot of inspiration from him, and I was able to reach out to him a few times, and he's a super friendly guy.
That's cool.
And as far as like the jiu-jitsu world, Craig Jones, he's an athlete in the jiu-jitsu world, and he just puts up some funny stuff, and he's a good follow.
I think let me see if it's, oh yeah, this guy. He is he sponsored by OnlyFans?
I'm not sure. I don't
things?
think, actually he might be getting paid by them, to be honest. But
I know it was a joke. Like he was wearing like the
rash guard.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people were upset by that, but I think he's just a controversial dude. He's just tries to get attention, but he's just funny. He doesn't take himself too serious, and I appreciate that for an athlete.
I gave him a follow too. I think he's obviously a very, very good athlete, but I think
talented.
You're exactly right. He doesn't take himself too seriously. Like he likes to have fun.
Yeah, so, he's not always in first place, and I appreciate how he takes that. It makes it's a regular experience. Not everyone is a champion, and that's okay.
Definitely. Yeah, he's cool. That when you said that name, like I think that's who you're talking about, and I just looked him up. I'm like, yeah, same guy. That's cool. And then next question is about travel. So I know you just had a big travel from Miami to New Hampshire, but we can talk about that. But do you have any places that you've gone recently as far as like travel either for like work or weightlifting, jiu-jitsu, or vacation?
Yeah, for sure. The last place I traveled was to Ecuador to visit family. I'm originally from Ecuador, so whenever I get a chance to see my sisters and my father over there, it's always a good time. If you've never been outside the country and you're trying to go to a place where you could do so many different things, from going hiking to going to the beach, to the diversity is good in that country, and it's a good time seeing family.
That's awesome. And then we got next question, shifting over to weightlifting, CrossFit, maybe even jiu-jitsu, but we got favorite sneaker.
So my favorite sneaker is a particular one for Olympic weightlifting. It's the Romelio 2s. All right. Nice. I think right now there's a Romelio 4, and I've tried all of them. I've tried the Chinese weightlifting shoes. And for me, the go-to is the Romelio 2s.
I like that. That's a good answer. That's an OG shoe for sure.
Yeah.
Do you what do you think about the new tier shoes that came out with the wide toe box?
The wide toe, I haven't tried them, so I can't really give a big opinion on that. Aesthetically, they don't look very competitive, but I guess I'll have to try them out at one point and see really how they feel.
Yeah, I have a friend who just bought a pair and he really likes them, but I haven't tried them either. I was just curious to see if you had any thoughts on it. Yeah, because there's a lot of companies that are making weightlifting shoes. Now we got Noble has a pair. Well, Reebok came out with a pair a couple years ago, but they're in the game now too. But yeah, the big ones we hear back in the day is like obviously the Nikes, the Adidas.
Yeah.
Yep. What's the Chinese one called? Is it Antas? Antas. Yep. Yeah, those are really popular too. Cool. I like that. That's a good answer. How about favorite movement? So this could be your traditional lifts with Olympic lifting, or it could be maybe like an accessory lift that you've really been liking, or maybe not loving, but liking the results from recently.
So my favorite movement is the split jerk. In Olympic weightlifting, there's a saying that says split jerk, or the jerk wins medals, because what you could tie on the snatch, and by the time you get to the clean and jerk, you could clean it, but if you don't jerk it, you're not going to get that medal, right. and that's really what it comes down to. That's the last effort that you give in the sport of Olympic weightlifting, the jerk. And I really love and love having confidence in that movement, and being able to really work on it so that when you hit that clean, whether it feels like a house, you take that breath and it's going to get there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's a good analogy. The split jerk wins medals.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's a lot. That's a movement a lot of people struggle with, especially coming from a CrossFit background. It's a move that sometimes is in programming, but not a lot of people need work on it, for sure.
For sure. I think it's a very complex movement. A lot of people see the snatch as a very complex movement, and I do. I think it is. But the jerk, because of being in that split position, requires a lot of technique within the angles so that your hips are in the right place, and it's very particular.
And also too, I think with a lot of people that come from CrossFit and get into weightlifting, through a lot of CrossFit gyms, they kind of allow an option with a lot of lifts. They, like, for example, like if the workout's like Grace, like 20 clean and jerks for time, you could do your split jerk, or you could do like a push jerk. Like, and maybe a lot of times probably people are like, oh, I'm gonna do like the option I'm more used to, which is might be the push jerk or the squat jerk versus like a split position. So that also could be why people coming, especially from a CrossFit background, just aren't super. They don't practice it a lot.
Yeah, it just takes a lot of repetition. It's footwork. A coach, Zygmunt, at the OTC, I was able to do a camp there, and
that's cool.
It was amazing, actually. That was like one of the highlights of my weightlifting experience. When he went over the split jerk, literally made us do empty bar work and just footwork. He called it a dance. He said, this is like a dance. And he'll make a split, and he'll be like, 1, 2, go, split, 1, 2. And we were literally dancing. And we did it so much with an empty bar that the bottom of my foot was sore the next day from, just driving into the ground. It was great. It was one of the best experiences.
That's really cool. Just greasing that groove, just getting used to that.
That's all it was. And that's how I teach the kids. We'll stay at a PVC for a whole class, and we'll just do split work drills until they get the hang of it, because that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. So that pretty much wraps it up for the rapid fire. So we're gonna get so next I want to get into your background. Basically, how did you get into coaching, Olympic lifting, jiu-jitsu, and then we can kind of talk about your just general training philosophy. Yeah. And then and all this could be a little bit intertwined, and then kind of get into talking about competition. For sure. So I guess let's start with your origin story. How did you get into just coaching in general?
Well, for me, coaching or the passion for coaching grew very early on. My wrestling coach made a huge impact on me through my high school career and even after high school. And that's when I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know what sport I would pick. I never actually knew which sport I was gonna. When you're little and they ask you, "Oh, what do you want to be?" I was a kid that said, "I want to be a professional athlete." I left it super broad early on because I didn't know which one I was gonna put all my time into. Because I feel early on that I knew that I loved basketball, I love soccer, I love wrestling, and that's how I've been. I've been able to spend at least 5 or 6 years in certain sports and got to a point where I compete at a high level, get to experience that. Sometimes I'll win, sometimes I'll get third place. That's okay for me. But getting to a high level and being able to go through the process of learning and really applying that technique, and then in every competition in different sports, there's certain mental gains that you have to surpass to be able to succeed in that sport. The mental resilience that you get from being right outside of a MMA cage before it opens and then you go in, that's something that many people can understand. Or that mental resilience where you miss 2 snatches and you have one more. If you don't hit that, you're gonna bum out. It's something that you have to surpass that. It's very unique to the sport.
Yeah, that's cool. And I think I'm in a similar mindset of you, is that I was kind of drawn to those individual sports, and it might have just been because once you kind of pass into the 20s and 30s, those things become just more available.
Yeah.
But
So the first sport I ever played coming out of Ecuador, right? So I moved here from Ecuador. I was here when I moved, I was 7. First sport was soccer. Soccer was like the fundamental sport for me growing up in South America until I was 7. Uh, that's the first sport I started playing here. I got pretty competitive with it, and then when I got into middle school, I remember one of the wrestling coaches for the middle school. He reached out to me. He saw me in the cafeteria. I was probably weighing like 85 pounds. And he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, have you ever wrestled before?" And I was like, "No, I've never done it before. I didn't even know that was a sport." He's like, "Hey, I want you to come to practice. I need a lightweight. We have a competition coming up, and I think you do good for for that weight class." And I was like, "Sure, I'll come. I'll try it." And I remember I went to practice and I had pinned the first day of practice the kid that was a weight class above me. And the coach was like, "Hey, you got to come to the match. You got to come to the match. Like, I need you to fill that spot." And I remember I was like, "Look, you got to talk to my mom. Like, if my mom approves, I'll be there." And I remember he had called her and he told her, "Hey, your son has a lot of potential in wrestling, whatever. I would love him to come to the match." And I went. So like a week into wrestling, I went to my first match and I win. I win the first match just with 1 week of practice. And after that, I fell in love with wrestling. I wrestled all the way through high school. So then wrestling had been, my passion all the way until I graduated high school. But back in 2009, 2008, MMA was huge. The UFC was something that was pulling a lot of, wrestlers' attention. That was back when, Rashad Evans was there, Thiago Silva was there, and it was like a huge hype to be an MMA fighter. So before I graduated high school, I had already joined a local CrossFit gym that had a jiu-jitsu gym right next to it. And that's how I got introduced to both CrossFit and jiu-jitsu. He was a Brazilian. He was the box owner of box number 76. And we're over I think over 6,000 boxes right now.
Wow.
So yeah, very early on. This guy, I'm talking about like tire flips and mile runs. Wow. Type of, back in the day. So that's when I got introduced to the barbell. And I used that primarily to train, to get in shape for wrestling, because that was like everything I cared about back then. So I spent a lot of time doing CrossFit. And
what was the
obviously,
name of the
Ripped Fitness Center.
Ripped.
I think he calls himself CrossFit Miami now.
Cool.
Yeah. And then through that, he had the jiu-jitsu gym there available, and I got introduced to jiu-jitsu. So the amazing thing for me was that I was able to get introduced to jiu-jitsu while I was in wrestling. And it was kind of like an easier mental transition, because wrestling, you can never be on your back. And in jiu-jitsu, they're like, "Oh, you should stay on your back." And it was a very conflicting thing. But I was able to merge them pretty good early on. And I also fell in love with jiu-jitsu. I was like, damn, this sport is beautiful. I like the idea of the gi, the technique, being able to do certain things that you can't do without the gi. Because I wrestled since middle school. So I've been doing that for a while. So long story short, by the time I graduated high school, my wrestling coach was also training with me, like MMA. We had joined the American Top Team, and then the coaches were like, "Hey, you should try doing MMA." And I was like, "All right, sure." I think that'll be like a pretty organic transition for me. I've already been training a little bit of stand-up, and I got into MMA. It was an amazing experience being able to fight. I did a couple amateur fights in Florida, but in Florida, back in the day, you had to wear shin guards and a headgear, and it was a little bit too much for me. I wanted the real experience. So my wrestling coach at the time, he's from Michigan, and he got me into this fighting organization in Michigan, and that was it. That was nice. It was the full experience, no shin guards, everything goes, and I was able to do good. I fought, I think 4 fights for the organization was called TWC. And it was a very unique experience. I loved it, but it wasn't my passion. Early on, I realized I could go without the striking, without the blows. I like more the finesse of being able to either pin someone or submit someone. And I knew that, if you get stuck in MMA, it's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm glad I got to get a little bit away from MMA and then realize that I had a lot of passion for training. So that's when I really got into CrossFit. I started competing in CrossFit. You see how it all kind of intertwines.
Yep.
And then through
it shows you're passionate.
Yeah, I am for sure. And it shows that I'm also like, I have a love for competing as well. So like I like the idea of getting good at something and being able to kind of, put yourself out there and test yourself.
Totally.
So then through that process of competing in CrossFit is when I met a CrossFit coach. His name is Alfred. He works for Team Soul back in the day. And that's how I got into Team Soul. He, one of the coaches was first coaching me. And he was the one that told me, hey, you should try out weightlifting. He's like, you're light, you're small, but you're lifting pretty good weight. And I was like, sure, let's do that. Let's give that a shot. And then I fell in love with that sport as well, I spent probably like 8 years after that just doing Olympic weightlifting, really taking it seriously, trying to get the best education. I've done a few camps, seminars with, Torokti and just trying to get as much and different looks as I could. And the sport of weightlifting is a good thing about that is that you can learn, and you can learn through other people competing. So I think one of the best things that I did early on in weightlifting, I had volunteered for USAW to be a loader at one of the world's competitions. And literally what I did, I took a note, and every coach, every cue he gave his athlete, I was just writing them down.
Wow. You're a student of the game.
Yep. And it's a sport that you could do that, and it translates pretty quick because you can understand and see why he did that and what the athlete really needed. And hey, it was the best volunteering sessions I've done in my life. I got a lot out of it, and I feel like more coaches should definitely do that.
That's really cool. I've never heard that advice before, but it makes so much sense to go volunteer for a major, because essentially, if you think about it, you're just getting immersed in the best athletes and the best coaches there are.
For sure.
For all day.
All day. They actually give you a meal, and they'll give you like a place to stay.
That is really cool. That's good.
Yeah.
Yep. That's cool. Yeah. And then we're skipping ahead a little bit, but I saw that you're getting ready with your athletes. You're going to be going to a nationals meet coming up.
Yeah, for sure. Right? So what USAW did, I think the last 2 years, they put all nationals together. So like all youth, juniors, seniors, they all go within like the same week. So it's like a nationals week. And that's like the big deal. That's the biggest meet that you could do in the United States. And I got a team of 6 kids competing, and I'm super stoked for that. That's like the biggest team that I've been able to develop. All those athletes have, worked really hard to get there, and I give them the credit. They're the ones that put in the work and trust the process and are able to like set goals and get there. And then for me, that's huge, being able to have kids under the age of 11 years old, setting goals and working towards them, and controlling how much they eat just because they need to make weight. And it goes a long way. And them just showing up and being there, that's it. That's the experience that you could ask for.
Having a team of 6 kids competing at nationals, that's a big team.
Yeah, it is. I'm really proud of it. I'm super excited for that.
Because most coaches will have like one person.
Yeah, I mean that's a thing. I give credit also to the gym I come from. Team Soul was able to provide the best facility and the best co-workers. A lot of the people that I work with there are top of what they do, you know, the best gymnastics coach, the best powerlifting coaches, the best Olympic weightlifting coaches also in Florida. And I think with their support and all of us working together, we've been able to build this team.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So these kids that are coming in, let's start to talk about, I guess, kind of your coaching philosophy, and maybe even like how did you get into more like the youth weightlifting side of it versus adults?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a person that realized that repetition and technique goes a long way because of everything I've done. And it's not the easiest thing to do in the sport of Olympic weightlifting with someone that's an adult. A lot of the ego is something that's hard to break. A lot of the, you know, them buying into what you're saying and being able to like go really light for a period of time to actually work and develop, you know, the correct movement patterns. Sometimes it's just very difficult for you to do that, especially with someone that has already some sort of like competitive itch and they feel like they're almost ready to compete. It's hard, you know, and sometimes they feel like it's not worth it. Sometimes they feel like they could get away with that. And it's for me, it's been a great reward to be able to work from scratch with a kid that, you know, wants to learn to move and is okay working with a PVC for 2 months, and they understand that, you know, movement and the quality of the movement is what's going to keep them safe. And they're not really, you know, trying to go as heavy as they can every session. It's nice, you know.
Totally. So obviously the programming for adults and kids are gonna be pretty different. So like you said, what you basically just like you really structure like movement quality first and just
For
really
sure.
these kids are moving well, repetition. But what do you typically do as far as like do you have like is everybody different, or do you kind of have like a set program of like, okay, this is where you're gonna start, this is where we're gonna progress to with these kids?
So with the kids and the way that we built that program, I made it was like a 2 times a week class where a lot of them were there. So like we had a class of 15 kids. Not all 15 wanted to compete in Olympic weightlifting, but they're all practicing the sport of Olympic weightlifting. I believe that Olympic weightlifting could be one of like the best foundational sports that you could do for a kid, whether it's gymnastics or weightlifting. I think both are great. You know, I think they develop skills that could go a long way and they could transfer into any other sport. You know, if they choose to play basketball, they're going to be physically capable of. And I think they'll be able to perform at a better rate than someone that didn't do any of it, you know? So the concept was we do like a little bit of injury prevention. We educate them through the sport of Olympic weightlifting. We practice technique, and then they'll finish with a little bit of functional fitness. And we'll be able to like translate. Not every session had functional fitness. Sometimes we would do a little bit of strength work, but there would always be technique work. We would always have majority of the period to work technique and to do a lot of reps. We rarely get to go really heavy because I don't want them to feel like that's something they need to do to accomplish their goals. We set goals. We have like a goal board, and those are numbers that at the beginning of the season they would strive to get to, and we would work there little by little progressively. But the main idea for them has always been the technique. You know, the class is as big as 15, and every kid has different loads, and being able to manage their loads accordingly is something that not every coach can do. But thankfully, I've been able to have great assistant coaches, and we've been all on the same page, and slowly progressing the kids has been the biggest key. You know, making them want to improve their technique before adding the weight has gone a long way. You know, for me, the biggest accomplishment was when a kid would hit, let's say he hits the training bar with the yellows, the 1.5s, and then I'll be like, okay, let's go up to the blues. I think you're ready to try. And he would be like, you know what? I want to stay light. Let me try that one more time so I could feel better. That was for me, the best experience, being able to have a kid kind of analyze how he felt and like understand the movement himself to be like, you know what? I want to do one more here and really feel confident with this one. And that's great for like a 7-year-old. That's
Yeah.
that goes a long way in this sport for sure. And more than anything, even when we compete, we have that mentality. I always strive for a 6-for-6 meet with them. Just because the repetition is key. I don't want them to feel like we're chasing a particular number. I rather them chase a proper movement. And that has gone a long way. I feel like that's helped them keep a gradual increase on their numbers. And now we have 6 kids going to nationals, and I couldn't be happier.
That is truly incredible. And yeah, like you said, that shows an incredible amount of maturity for a 7-year-old to say, no, I just want to I don't want to go up. I just want to make sure I feel good and get better. That's incredible.
That kid, his name is Mason. He's gonna be a great athlete, no matter what sport he chooses.
That's cool. Yeah, that's great. That's great IQ as an athlete from an early age. Very good.
Yep.
So you guys do twice a week, typically?
Twice a week, typically. Those kids that want to actually compete in the sport of weightlifting would then do some sessions on the side with me. I would try to motivate the parents to do it at least 3 times a week. That would be like a minimum, so that they could get as much exposure and repetition throughout the week. For a long time, since majority of them have been under the age of 10, we don't really do too much strength work. The main concept is repetition, and understanding that as they get taller and longer and bigger, we keep making adjustments, and things are going to feel awkward for a while, but they're okay with it. Them being able to trust me and, hey, you're a little taller now, let's go a little bit wider on your grip. Yeah, they're okay with that, and that's what's going to make the difference.
That's really cool. And that 15 kids, that's a huge group. I know a lot of CrossFit gyms, not even all of them, a lot of CrossFit gyms try to roll out these kids programs, and sometimes they have people, sometimes not, but 15 kids, that's about as big as I've ever heard for a kids program.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That was those are for me one of the biggest accomplishments, to be honest. I've competed in so many different things, but being able to develop a big group of kids, and I'm gonna tell you another story that really touched me through this process. Right now we have 6 kids, right? It started with 1 kid going to nationals, and it took about 3 years to build 6 kids. But through that process, the friendship and not only the friendship, but the sportsmanship amongst them, supporting each other and pushing each other, hey, you're talking a little bit too much. We need you to hit that 10 kilos at that competition. The accountability, bro, that's something very unique to this sport that I've also fallen in love with, because it's a nice experience. They're competing as an individual athlete, but the team aspect behind the scenes has made a huge impact.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm going back to what you were saying earlier about how you fell in love with each of the sports, like jiu-jitsu, the CrossFit, the weightlifting. I've also dabbled in each one of those for a period of weeks and months, and I totally agree with you that each one of those sports you can get really sucked into it in a good way, and they each have their own kind of style. And when I did a couple training blocks with Olympic weightlifting, and it does the team, the camaraderie, it's awesome, and it's very different from the jiu-jitsu. It's very different, and not in a bad or good way. It's just different. It's cool.
Yeah.
So I totally get what you're saying with that.
Yeah, for sure.
And that same group, you'll probably meet the guy who's because there's a coach out here in Providence. You might know him. It's a barbell club called Rhode Island Performance. This guy, Coach Jared, he's taken a lifter to nationals in it's coming up in July. Is it?
Yeah. It's in Colorado Springs. Yeah.
I'll have to connect you with him because you'll definitely see him out there. Yeah,
for sure.
So I guess actually I had another question on that, kind of like the philosophy piece. So you talked earlier about making weight with the kids. So how do you help the kids with that as far as like from a nutrition standpoint and like maybe even like a supplement standpoint too?
For sure. Obviously I'm not a nutritionist, so I'm not gonna specifically tell a kid what to eat and what not to eat. But there's one tool that I use. It's an app. It's an app called the Yuka. YUKA. This app, when you scan any item, would give you red flags on a lot of additives that item has, and it rates from a 0 to 100 scale on how good the product is, and it makes it very simple. So good is green, so is yellow, and not good is red. So a lot of the things these kids will come in with into class, maybe holding like a prime bottle. Not a big fan of those things. I would scan it and I'll be like, look, it's yellow. And then we would look at the hazardous additives and the effects that it would have. And then just making them kind of realize that a lot of things that they eat have a lot of hidden and hazardous objects. And I think that's like a simple tool that I could hand off to them. A lot of kids nowadays have phones, and it's a good way to have them, hey, you want this? Okay, let's scan it and you could see what it has yourself. And it's a good way for them to kind of realize that.
That's a really cool app because obviously with kids, you don't want to have them like tracking. You're not
gonna have them.
You don't have to track macros and stuff like that. Seems just wait. You want to keep it like fun and easy.
Yeah, and keep it simple.
That's a really cool tool. It might even be good for adults. I mean,
it is for sure. I mean, I got it for myself, honestly. When I go grocery shopping, when you're in between two items and you scan both, it's a good way to kind of break that tie.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it like, let's say like you have like a banana or something like that. Will it scan that, or is it just like?
I think as long as it has a QR code, it'll probably scan. There's been very little items that it doesn't read.
Right. And if you're grabbing something like a banana, you probably have the idea like, okay, this is a very natural.
Yeah, for sure. That's an automatic green. But yeah, any like processed item, it'll red flag the hazardous, and more than anything, it'll show you the effects that it'll do on you and the potentially the harm.
So it gives you a reason why you shouldn't have it.
Correct.
That's cool. And got slightly switching topic, but going along the same lines. One thing I've heard as far as like when it comes to working with especially young kids is that obviously you have to, like, the way you approach it has to be different than an adult, like you were saying earlier, but how do you find ways to like keep the kids really like engaged, like interactive, like keep it fun so they want to keep coming back session after session? For sure.
Obviously the goal would be to make attainable goals, right? So being able to set attainable goals will keep them, seeing progress, and through that progress they motivate themselves to keep, going heavier and striving for now. For a long time, a lot of the kids on that whiteboard said they wanted to clean the green plates. For kids, visuals like the color green was a thing, and the green plates, for a kid is a lot of weight. We're talking about 10 kilos on each side with their training bar. And a lot of them started hitting the green plates, and that was an amazing thing, and for them to be able to go to the board and like, hey, I crushed this green plate. it was a good way to attain them, and there they'll motivate themselves to now, okay, next goal, I want to go to nationals. And that's how it starts, So attainable goals is a good way to keep them. And for sure, a lot of the warm-ups and a lot of the post workouts that I do is mainly fun. I try to keep them engaged. I try to make it a little competitive, and that's really what it comes down to. Do
you ever have someone? Well, I'm sure it happens. They write a goal, and you're like, let's take it down. Like someone's like, I want to clean like the Reds or something like that. You're like, well, for sure. I mean, a lot of them, when they set their goals, they kind of have already a little bit of experience.
some of them would probably say, I want to go to youth nationals. And if it's a beginner kid, I definitely suggest, okay, let's just start with, let's move on from the training bar to the 15 kilo bar, and let's make that your first goal. And then that'll be somewhere that they could start. But thankfully, in the sport of Olympic weightlifting for kids, it's really not that unattainable. I feel like if they train a good and consistent 2 years, any kid with good technique should be able to qualify.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's gonna get more competitive over the next few years?
For sure. I see kids nowadays. There's a small group in Canada that's a Canadian coach. She's crushing it. She's doing an amazing job with kids, and I see girls lifting an insane amount of weight. And for sure, the sport as it keeps growing is gonna get more competitive. But I think it's getting a little more accepting now within the community for kids to practice the sport, and I think it's only a matter of time.
With that, that's a great segue to another question I wanted to ask you about the common myths. So I'm sure you get questions all the time from the parents,
sure.
like, "Oh, there's a stunt growth, is it bad for them injured?" For
sure. I think that's all like a misconception. The idea that the kid's lifting super heavy. That really comes down to obviously the coach, because I'm not going to speak for every coach, but I like keeping it light. I like for them to be accountable of the amount of times that they miss. So missing is not a common thing in training. Focusing on purely technique, even when we go to competition, putting numbers that they should be able to hit. And if they don't hit, then it's just part of like that competitive experience that they need to go through, but it has nothing to do with not being able to do, because they most likely have done that in practice. I think the myth of it being dangerous, and the myth of them getting their growth stunted is a big one. And I've been able to be around a lot of physical therapists. So athletics in Miami has been a great one, and we've gone over the huge benefits that this sport could bring to kids, and that's the information that I translate to the parents, showing them that it's improved bone density for a lot of people, and it's only going to help them, develop and grow in a safer way. And as long as they're practicing with technique, it could be one of the most safe sports that you could do. There's not many variables. You're not running and hitting someone while you're running in this sport. It's just you and the barbell, and as long as your technique is proficient, then you should be safe.
Yeah, that's old myths obviously die hard. So it was like a myth just back in the day. It's not good for kids, not good for kids. But the more research that came out, it's like, not only is this good for kids, but it's going to be safer for them to do some sort of physical activity under the guidance of a coach than
for
it is.
Sure.
And then, like you said earlier, like it is, all the research shows Olympic weightlifting is one of the safest sports compared to basketball, compared to football, compared to soccer.
Yeah.
Like there's very, very minimal injuries.
Not only that, but check this out. A lot of kids nowadays, because of the time that they spend with their screens, they have a lot of they have a hard time with attention, right? And being able to really slow things down. This sport is very unique that it forces you to do that. In order to be technical, you actually have to focus, put a lot of focus into, a specific movement. And I think that's also a good way for them to change the pace and the way that they behave and the way that they act, being able to like slow down and, hey, you got to really focus for this lift in order for it to work. I think it goes a long way for them. And I feel like it, I haven't done the research, but I feel like it for sure benefits them outside of the sport.
Yeah. Like you said, even from like that mental side point. And to draw a parallel with new CrossFitters coming into weightlifting, just because that's so common. A lot of, obviously, weightlifting, you do your reps and then you sit back down. Then you do your reps and you sit back down. And a lot of these CrossFitters, they have this mentality of just go all the time. And they sit down, they're like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? And it's like, no, this is your time to relax, focus, get ready for your next set. And it takes time to adjust to that. But it's But after a while goes, it just becomes second nature, and it's like you can realize it, and it feels good.
Yeah, for sure. You start using it, and then you realize the benefits of it, and you could also apply it in other, in other instances outside of the sport, and it goes a long way, I feel.
Patience, focus, all that,
Yep.
all good mental side effects there. Do you recommend any supplements with kids or no?
No, I'm not a big fan of recommending supplements. As a young athlete, I made the mistake that no one really helped me correct, where back in the days you were buying the pre-workouts and the BCAAs and the aminos, and I was stacked with all the supplements, and I think it was more harmful than beneficial, and I don't think it's something that I would recommend. I think good foods and high quality ingredients will go a long way for kids.
I like that. That's really good. Yeah, with supplements, like, sure, they can be good, but you're not gonna fix a bad diet with a bunch of supplements. You gotta make sure your nutrition is good.
Yep.
How about I'm not sure how common any of this stuff is with kids, but wanted to ask, as far as recovery goes, I know with adults it's people are really dialed into like meditation, massage, PT, chiro, cold, heat, all that type of stuff is really popular right now, and obviously helpful. But when it comes to kids, as far as recovery goes, what do you see? What types of things do you recommend, or is there anything you
yeah, I think for kids, that's a tricky one, right? Because a kid sometimes has a hard time identifying soreness or fatigue, and they have a hard time identifying if they're actually injured or they're sore. And the most common thing would be, they'll be a little bit sore and they'll feel like they're not going to be able to go full potential in that training day. I think the most common thing would be to scale down their movement and have them still move. I'm a big fan of constantly staying moving and just scaling down the load and have them maybe just stay with a PVC and just practice certain technique. The good thing is that they don't need to ever go heavy, and also just identifying the amount of stress that they've had in their daily routine. Kids sometimes will have like a free time day at school and they'll go crazy. They'll end up exerting themselves to max capacity, and they don't understand how that is actually going to affect their training. They'll come to training and be like, oh, I'm super tired, and it's like, okay, how was your day? What'd you do at school? And they'll be like, oh, I played soccer for 2 hours. Like, all right, that kind of makes sense. So now we know, and we'll just stay super light. And being able to work with kids that way also goes a long way,
So mostly just volume management, making sure they're taking enough rest days, making sure they're
yeah, it's not like they're crushing, like heavy squats and heavy pulls. And I know that they're not really overloaded because of the weight, but they'll probably have like a rigorous day at school or something that they did on the weekend, and you just have to be able to like manage that as well, the same way you would with with an athlete that's older.
That's really cool. So we're getting towards the end here, so I want to ask you a couple more questions about kind of some of the stuff you're doing right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I had a question just based on your Instagram, but and then also just kind of wrapping up with what's in store for the future, anything else you want to plug.
Yeah,
I have a last question about a favorite quote, so keep in the back of your mind a favorite quote you might have.
Yeah, for sure.
So to start, I saw that you just got your brown belt.
Yes.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Thank you. I think it probably took a long time because I took a long break from when I got my purple belt to when I got back on the mat. But yeah, I think that's for me, a stepping stone. I'm really striving to get that black belt and continue learning.
That's cool. So is that something, as far as like your own personal fitness and competition, are you still kind of dabbling between a few things, or are you doing mostly jiu-jitsu or Olympic lifting, or?
Yeah, I think for the last 5 years, it's always been something where I want to be still on the mat and be able to compete in Olympic weightlifting. I'm dabbling between both of those sports. I love practicing both of them, so I want to still be able to compete at some point for both. Right now, I have a newborn. She's 8 weeks, and training has dialed down a little bit, but my goals are still there. So everything I do is kind of intentionally for that. And I think jiu-jitsu for me is not only a sport, it's a good way to practice teaching as well, teaching in a different modality, and then eventually down the line I strive to teach my daughter, and hopefully she loves to compete jiu-jitsu and weightlifting. I'll give her options and she could choose.
That's really cool. And I saw along the same line the 2 pictures you post on the podium, but at your competition that you brought your daughter with you.
Yeah, that's a huge thing for me. I know she's going to be immersed in a lot of those communities, and like I said, I hope she falls in love with one of those.
That's cool. Any comps coming up? I know you said nationals, but anything for you coming up too, or any other comps
for me? So I just competed at the Miami Open as a purple belt, and I had won that. Now I'm going to start looking for a competition to do in Boston. It'll probably be towards the end of the year, and yeah, I'm just trying to get acquainted with the new location. Like you said, I moved from Miami to New Hampshire, and things are a bit different here, but it's been amazing. I think the people have welcomed me in all the gyms that I've dropped into so far, and now it's just a matter of trying to identify what fits best and being able to use those places to keep growing.
That's really cool. Yeah, I saw you dropped into CrossFit Amskag recently.
Yeah,
they're a cool gym. They run a really good competition.
Yeah, it's a great community so far. They've been very welcoming, and I hope I could be there for a while.
That's cool. So, and then for your athletes, you have nationals coming up. Anything after that, or would that be kind of just like working towards like the next phase for the year after?
Yeah, after that, it's like you said, working into the next phase. Florida thankfully has a lot of local meets, and the gym that I come from, they actually host the MIA Classic, and they host the Iron Games, and using those 2 meets to kind of give them more practice and more reps in a competition setting is ideal for their season. I'll most likely fly back for a couple of those meets to be there for them in person. Right now, since I left Miami, they're under the hands of the team, and the team is someone, it's a team of people that I trust, and it's a team of people that we've all believe in the same things, and we all actually give practically the same cues. We all are all pretty dialed in, so it's a good way to keep them going and motivated. And a few of the kids also do some Zoom sessions with me to work on specific techniques and details. That's also a good thing about weightlifting. Olympic weightlifting, if you have a good camera, a good angle, you could still get work. A coach after a while doesn't need to give tactile cues. With certain verbal cues, we could get the work done. Totally. And I think it's a sport that also needs to tap into that. I don't feel like there's enough remote coaches out there, and that's something that actually works.
Everything in this closet.
Yeah, no, totally. That's there's a couple athletes I work with right now, and especially the big name coaches. Like, you'll have people on Zoom meetings like from California, like is all over the country. So no, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so let's we'll start to wrap up here. So I guess anything that you want to plug or want people to know about, I guess follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. Follow me on Instagram. My Instagram is Aleman305. I'm keeping that 305 because I love Miami, and Miami's, going to be home for a long time for me. But yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to make things happen in the North. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of youth programs that could be developed here, and I'm excited to see what happens for sure.
That's cool. And then I got the quote question for you. So the way I describe this is, so you're driving down, we'll use 95 because Highway 95 goes all the way from Maine to
Okay.
Florida.
Yeah.
Does it go through Miami?
Yeah. It does.
It does. Okay. So typically 95 has a lot of billboards on it. So in Rhode, where I'm in Rhode Island. So in Rhode Island, we have a bunch of lawyers and attorneys on the billboards. So you get one of those billboards for the day, and you can put whatever you want on it. Usually, like it's like a favorite quote or favorite mantra, favorite saying, something that you want to tell the people, kind of like in your local community.
Yeah. Something that I tell a lot of the kids when they're not feeling their best or when they need to feel a little motivated. I tell them effort and attitude. That's it. Very simple. Effort and attitude. That's all I look for. And you know, if you give your best effort and you have the best attitude, you're gonna get a lot of what you do.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you.
Well, cool. All right. So we're gonna wrap up with that. Andres,
Thank you, man.
Thank you. It's been awesome. And yeah, I'll try to make some connections with you.
Yeah, thank you. I would love that for sure. And if you know of anything you think I should go check out anywhere in particular, send it my way.
I will. Definitely will.
If you know any PTs around the area, I would love recommendations as well. I'm looking for a massage therapist, for a physical therapist, people that could take care of me up here.
Totally. Yeah, I'll send you some information over.
Thank you, bro.
All right, Roadie Strength signing off.